What's the pettiest rule your school ever tried to enforce? Our new cafeteria supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, decided we were too rowdy during lunch. So, halfway through sophomore year, she dropped this insane rule on us. Students had to stay seated the entire lunch period. No getting up without permission, no walking to friends, no throwing away trash until the final bell. It was like eating in a minimum security prison. The first day, my friend Jake tried to stand up to grab napkins, and Mrs. Patterson literally blew a whistle. A whistle in the cafeteria. "Mr. Anderson, return to your seat immediately," she barked while writing his name on her clipboard of shame. My friend Emma got written up for standing to hug her friend who'd just gotten back from being sick for a week. The lunch lady wouldn't even let kids get up to grab milk they forgot. By day 3, everyone was miserable. We had to pass everything down the table like we were at some weird family dinner from hell. Kids were throwing trash toward the cans from their seats, missing completely, and creating this disgusting mess everywhere. That's when I noticed something beautiful about Mrs. Patterson's stupid rule. She said, "No standing," but never mentioned anything about other positions. The next day, I walked into lunch and immediately dropped to my knees beside my usual table. Emma caught on instantly and knelt down next to me. We started eating our sandwiches while kneeling on the gross cafeteria floor. Mrs. Patterson spotted us within minutes. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she demanded, marching over with her clipboard ready. "Eating lunch," I said innocently. "The rule says no standing. We're not standing." She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a confused fish. This is disruptive," she finally managed. "How?" "We're quieter than usual. No chair scraping. Very peaceful, actually." Other kids started noticing. By the end of lunch, 12 people were kneeling at various tables. The next day, it was 30. Emma brought knee pads from her volleyball gear. Mrs. Patterson was losing her mind. She kept walking around asking teachers if kneeling counted as standing. Nobody knew what to tell her. Wednesday was peak chaos. Half the cafeteria was on their knees. This kid, Tyler, brought a yoga mat. People were kneeling at different tables to talk to friends, creating these weird kneeling migration patterns across the room. Mrs. Patterson finally snapped during fourth lunch. "Fine, no kneeling either," she screamed over the intercom. Challenge accepted. Thursday morning, I texted everyone. Floor picnic day. When lunch started, 40 kids laid completely flat on the cafeteria floor, using our backpacks as tables and eating while lying down. We looked like the world's strangest slumber party. The lunch ladies were taking pictures. Even Mr. Williams, the strictest teacher in school, was trying not to laugh while walking past our human carpet of rebellion. Mrs. Patterson took one look at the scene and marched straight to the principal's office. 20 minutes later, Principal Henderson's voice came over the intercom. "Students, please return to normal seating arrangements. The previous lunch restrictions have been modified." But here's the best part. The new rule they posted the next week. Read, "Students may stand briefly during lunch periods for necessary activities. However, dramatic kneeling, floor activities, or other disruptive positioning is prohibited." They had to specifically ban dramatic kneeling because of the incredible display of creativity and silent protest we staged that week. It wasn't just a rule anymore. It became a symbol of our refusal to be silenced and controlled by meaningless restrictions. Word about our cafeteria uprising spread like wildfire. What started as a simple act of defiance exploded into a full-scale movement, sparking conversations among students, teachers, and even parents about respect, freedom, and the importance of common sense in school policies. On social media, photos and videos of students kneeling, lying down, and transforming lunch into a floor picnic became viral sensations. Memes flooded the internet with hashtags like #KneelingRebellion and #FreeLunch movements appearing overnight. Students at other schools even reached out, sharing their stories of pushing back against absurd rules and asking for advice to initiate their own rebellions. Mrs. Patterson, once a strict enforcer of petty rules, became the unwitting star of countless jokes and viral videos. Despite her efforts to maintain discipline, even some teachers couldn't hide their amusement at the spectacle unfolding daily. Mr. Williams, the strictest and most serious teacher in the school, became an unlikely ally himself, gently reminding Mrs. Patterson that sometimes a little flexibility could lead to a happier, more respectful environment. The administration, after seeing the strength and creativity of the student body, acknowledged that their initial approach was too rigid. Principal Henderson's announcement marked a turning point. Students no longer had to fear standing up, more kneeling down for their right to a reasonable and enjoyable lunch break. The policy shift fostered a new atmosphere of mutual respect and understanding in the cafeteria. What made this movement particularly memorable was the way it brought students together. Strangers and friends alike bonded over shared laughter, creative acts of rebellion, and the simple act of taking a stand or a knee against oppression. It wasn't just about lunch anymore. It was about reclaiming a small slice of freedom. In the school day, years later, we still joke about the legendary cafeteria protests. The floor picnic became a rite of passage, a story passed down to younger students as a lesson in clever resistance and the power of community. For many of us, it was the moment we realized that sometimes the most ridiculous rules can inspire the strongest voices. And Mrs. Patterson, well, she learned that while rules are necessary, kindness, trust, and a little humor can go a much longer way than a whistle and a clipboard. Story 2. At my wedding, my sister's 7-year-old son jumped into the cake with both feet. Mom said you'd laugh, and then she'd buy me an iPhone, he shouted. My sister clapped slowly. You should thank my son. He made your boring wedding memorable. I smiled once, opened my phone, reviewed the family trust, and temporarily paused all 3 tuition plans. By 7:00 p.m., my sister was banned from the venue, and a waiter said, I stood there, mouth halfway open, watching frosting and sponge explode like confetti around my $600 custom heels. My wedding cake, a triple-tiered vanilla bean masterpiece, had just suffered a full-body assault from a first grader in Spider-Man socks. The music screeched to a halt. People gasped, phones were already up. And then came her voice, slow and mocking, slicing through the silence like a rusty butter knife. My sister, you should thank my son, she said, clapping slowly, unfazed. He made your boring wedding memorable. There was frosting on the chandelier. My husband looked stunned, hands frozen mid-toast, and me. I smiled just once, quiet, tight. Then I pulled out my phone. One swipe, Face ID, opened the Family Trust Management app. Paused all 3 tuition accounts my sister didn't know I controlled. That was at 6:52 p.m. By 7 o'clock. A security guard was gently escorting her out of the venue while she screamed about family loyalty. And at 7:03, a waiter approached me, headset in his ear and tray in hand. Ma'am, he said, the lawyer is online. 2. They say weddings bring out the best and worst in families. I didn't expect mine to showcase a live demonstration of both within the first 90 minutes. Let me rewind. My name is Lydia. I'm 33. A financial analyst with a very boring job and apparently a very boring wedding, according to my sister Natalie. She's 35, a full-time mom, part-time Instagram truth teller, and lifetime always looking for the spotlight. We've had tension for years, ever since high school, if I'm honest. But I never thought she'd use my wedding as her child's trampoline training ground. Natalie always had a way of turning everything into a performance. At Mom's retirement party, she announced she was finally going to be a yoga teacher. right as Mom was cutting the cake. At my graduation, she wore a white dress. Yes, to someone else's graduation and posed for more photos than me. But I digress. See, I've been helping Natalie financially for over 5 years. After her divorce, I stepped in quietly, paid her rent for 6 months, bought her kid a laptop for remote school, even covered a dental procedure when she was uninsured, all without broadcasting it. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because she was my sister. Because she said, "You're the one who always has it together." She made it sound like a compliment. It wasn't. It was a license. A license to dump every unpaid bill, every emotional outburst, every forgotten birthday gift on me with zero consequence. And I accepted it. I absorbed it. I became the financial sponge that made her feel bold enough to take risks. She never had to calculate. But this wedding was supposed to be my line in the sand. A day about me. When my fiancé Daniel proposed last fall, we agreed on something simple but elegant. We'd invite only 80 guests, mostly close friends, and a few family members. My parents were thrilled. His parents paid for the venue. I handled the rest quietly, including the tuition plans for my nephews. 3 of them, one of whom had just gone airborne into $2,400 worth of vanilla buttercream. I should have seen the warning signs earlier. 2 weeks before the wedding, Natalie asked if her kids could help with something cute at the reception. I suggested handing out programs. She suggested a TikTok dance introduction to make it viral. I laughed. She didn't. Then came the flower girl dress drama. My 6-year-old niece had a beautiful blush tulle gown picked by Daniel's sister. Natalie texted me a photo of a glitter monstrosity from a fast fashion site and said, "This is more her. She needs to shine." When I declined, she accused me of stifling her daughter's individuality. Daniel said, "Just let it go. It's one dress." I let it go. Mistake. At the rehearsal dinner, she cornered me during dessert and said, "Just don't expect your nieces and nephews to behave like little robots tomorrow. Kids should be free. Not everything has to be perfect like you want it." That perfect dripped with disdain. She made it sound like being prepared, responsible, and financially stable was a character flaw. Still, I smiled because that's what I always did. And that smile, that silence is exactly what enabled what happened next, right after dinner. I caught her son Jaden sneaking cake frosting with his fingers from the display fridge. I gently told him to stop, wiping his hands with a napkin. "This is a special cake, buddy. We have to wait till tomorrow." He giggled and said, "But Mommy said I could touch it." She said, "It's just food." Again, I let it go. I let everything go until I didn't. The day of the wedding, everything went smoothly until the reception. Daniel and I had just finished our first dance. I had just kissed my husband, for the first time as a married woman when I heard the shriek, followed by gasps, laughter. A splash. Jaden, in his little suit, had jumped onto the table and plunged both feet into the cake like it was a bouncy castle. And when someone pulled him out, when his socks were soaked in frosting and his hands were covered in blue sugar roses, he shouted loud and proud. Mom said, "You'd laugh, and then she'd buy me an iPhone." Let that sink in. Not only was this deliberate, it was incentivized. As the guests stood frozen, trying to figure out whether to gasp or laugh or pull out their phones, Natalie clapped. Literally, she stood there in her sequin dress and slow clapped. "You should thank my son," she said with a smirk. "He made your boring wedding memorable." That's when something inside me went still. Not angry, not sad, just done. Done pretending. She meant well. Done telling myself she didn't know better. Done accepting that being family meant enduring public embarrassment with a forced smile. I turned, walked to my purse on the gift table, pulled out my phone, opened the family trust portal, paused all 3 tuition plans I've been secretly managing. The ones I'd set up under my name with my money. The same money that had paid for her son's speech therapy last year. The same account she never asked about because she assumed it would always be there. I didn't say a word. Not yet. When the venue manager asked if I wanted to pursue legal action for property damage, I said no. I didn't want to involve a kid, but I did want Natalie gone. So I quietly asked the event coordinator to have security escort her and her children from the premises. She didn't go quietly, of course. Seriously, you're kicking me out because of cake? God, Lydia, you always overreact. People stared. Daniel's aunt looked horrified. His teenage cousin muttered. That's so embarrassing, Natalie yelled as she was led to the parking lot. This family is so cold. You're people who think they're better than everyone else. I watched. From the ballroom window as she stomped to her SUV, her son trailed behind her. Sobbing, not from guilt, but because he didn't get the iPhone. I stood still, just breathing. The fallout began before the DJ could cue up the next song. At first, there was this weird stunned silence, like the room hadn't decided yet if this was going to become a family tragedy or a viral TikTok moment. People whispered. Daniel's best man leaned over and asked, "Was that planned?" A tie just shook. My head, then my aunt, who's always been a little too fond of her pan noir, loudly muttered, "Well, that child might need more discipline." I tried to stay composed, smiled at guests, hugged Daniel, accepted compliments from people trying to pretend they hadn't just seen an entire wedding. Cake destroyed by a sugar pea possessed 7-year-old dot, and then my phone buzzed 3 times. From Natalie. Natalie, 6:58 p.m. What is wrong with you? Natalie, 700 p.m. Unpause the accounts, or I swear to God, Lydia. That last text, it's the one about the accounts that told me everything she knew. Somewhere along the way, she must have found out. Maybe she saw the withdrawal summaries when I paid for Jaden's tutoring. Maybe Mom let it slip. Either way, she knew what I'd done for her kids. And now, in her twisted logic, she thought she had leverage. So I called her. I stepped outside to the stone patio. The sky was lavender. My dress still smelled like flowers and fondant. I pressed her name on the screen and waited. She answered instantly. "I cannot believe you," she hissed, skipping. "Hello? This is your family. You're seriously going to sabotage your nephew's education over some stupid cake." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You bribed your son to vandalize my wedding. He's a child, Lydia. He doesn't understand boundaries like you do. He just wanted to have fun, right?" I said calmly. "And you told him I'd laugh, then promised him an iPhone. Was that fun too?" She went quiet, so I kept going. "You've been getting help from me for years. Quietly, no questions asked. You needed rent, I paid it. You needed groceries, I sent gift cards. Your son needed speech therapy. I paid cash so insurance wouldn't reject it. And not once did you say thank you. Don't twist this like I'm some villain," she snapped. "You're not the hero you think you are. You just like control. You like being the one who's always on top with your clean little spreadsheets and your holier-than-thou attitude." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was textbook. Accuse the person helping you of arrogance the second they draw a boundary. You used your son as a prop, Natalie, and now you're mad because the usual support was suddenly unavailable. She started crying. Loud, performative soaps. "Do you know how hard it is being a single mom? You don't get it. You never had to struggle. No, I just chose not to create struggle where there didn't have to be any silence." Then she asked, quieter this time, "Are you really going to take away the boys' college funds over this?" I took a breath. I'm not taking anything away. I'm just putting it in a different name, one that doesn't reward you for using her role as a mother to avoid accountability." And then I hung up. By the time I got back inside, Mom was waiting. Her face said it all. Natalie had already called her. And she was in that awful mother mode where she tried to fix everything by smoothing it over with guilt and forced hugs. "Sweetheart," she said softly, touching my arm. "Maybe this isn't the time to make big decisions." I pulled my arm back. Actually, it's the perfect time." Mom blinked like she'd just realized something bigger than the cake was happening. "She's your sister," she whispered. "She's going through a lot. She's always going through a lot." I snapped, the calm cracking just a little. "And I'm always supposed to cover it." "Well, not anymore. But what about the kids? They'll be fine. I'll protect them, but I'm done shielding her from consequences." She looked at me like I just said something blasphemous, but I meant every word. At 8:15 p.m., the lawyer called, not because I needed legal action. I just wanted everything documented. He confirmed that all 3 trusts had been frozen and would be reassigned by Monday to educational-only usage with third-party management. Natalie wouldn't be able to touch a cent. The kids would still have their futures, but she'd no longer be the funnel. And that wasn't all. I sent a polite but firm email to the school accounts linked to the trust informing them of the change in guardianship control. I blind copied Natalie. 2 minutes later, another text. "Natalie, 8:21 p.m., you're seriously trying to destroy my life." No reply. At 9 p.m., Daniel took my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I nodded, not because I was fine, but because for the first time in my life, I had drawn a hard, clear line. And I meant it. We danced again, this time slower. The cake was gone, but someone had brought out a tray of mini tiramisu cups. The guests rallied. People laughed again. Someone even joked. Best wedding story ever. I let them laugh, but inside me, something shifted, something permanent. I thought the fallout would be louder, more dramatic, more public. But in reality, it came in quiet waves. 3 days after the wedding, my mom showed up at my apartment. No text, no call. Just knocked on the door holding a container of soup like. We were still pretending everything was fine. "I don't want to fight," she said. "I just want to talk." So, we sat. I let her speak first. "She's not doing well," Mom said. "She's not sleeping. She says Jaden's having nightmares. She's overwhelmed." "She's always overwhelmed," I said quietly. Mom sighed. "You've always been the strong one." I didn't respond because that line, "you're the strong one," is a trap. It's what people say when they want to excuse everyone else's behavior while holding you responsible for fixing it. She says she didn't think he'd actually jump. She thought he'd just make a mess, something small. I tilted my head. She instructed her child to destroy something that wasn't his, then stood there and mocked me when it happened. She planned it. She escalated it. That's not a mistake. That's intention. Mom looked down. Her hands trembled. "I just don't want the family to be broken." I finally spoke the words I've been carrying for years. "Mom, the family is broken. It's just that nobody ever wanted to admit it." I told her everything. The tuition plans, the dental bills, the rent I paid, how much I'd carried, and how little I'd ever asked for. She cried. Real tears. I think it was the first time she realized just how much had been placed on me while Natalie coasted on chaos. And then she asked the question I wasn't ready for. "Are you going to cut the kids off completely?" I shook my head. "Already reassigned the accounts. They're still funded, but Natalie won't have access. She's done." Over the next few weeks, the silence from my sister was deafening. No apologies, no explanations, just passive-aggressive Instagram stories about relatives who don't feel genuine and people who struggle with strong personalities. She unfollowed me on every platform. I didn't care. Daniel and I took our mini honeymoon, just a quiet 3-day cabin retreat by a lake. No chaos, just peace. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying someone else's crisis in my back pocket. I started sleeping better. I caught up on reading. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes, expecting drama. 2 months later, I got an email from Jaden's school. They thanked me for confirming the updated financial custodian information. Attached was a drawing he'd made for Auntie Lydia. Crayon and marker, a big heart with stick figures holding hands. One labeled me, one labeled you. I stared at it for 10 minutes before I cried. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded me why I'd done all of it in the first place. Not for Natalie, not for credit, for them, for the kids. Around month 3, things started changing. My younger cousin texted me out of nowhere. Just heard what happened at your wedding? To guts. Respect. One of Natalie's old friends, someone I barely knew, messaged me on LinkedIn. Honestly, good for you. And then, surprisingly, my brother-in-law, her ex, reached out. He asked if we could meet for coffee. He told me he'd seen it coming for years. That Natalie always expected someone else to pick up the pieces. She thinks being a mom gives her a pass for everything, he said. But being a parent doesn't excuse being a bully. We talked for over an hour. He offered to take more custody time. If the school ever had concerns, said he'd support anything I did for the kids, even if it meant bypassing Natalie entirely. It felt like a small, quiet shift in the tides. The final confirmation came at Thanksgiving. We hosted it at Daniel's parents' house. And for the first time ever, I didn't have to explain someone's meltdown. I didn't have to cover a bill. I didn't have to mediate a screaming match or whisper apologies into a wine glass. Instead, I passed the potatoes. I laughed at jokes. I held Daniel's hand under the table, and when someone asked, "So, what's your favorite memory from the wedding?" I smiled. The moment the cake exploded, I said, because after that, everything finally made sense. They laughed, but I wasn't joking. That frosting-covered child gave me the final push I needed to set myself free. It's strange what you remember when the noise finally fades. Not the smashed cake, not the screams, not even the lawyer call. What I remember most now is the silence afterward, not the empty kind, the peaceful kind. For the first time in years, my life feels mine again. Not rented out in emotional installments to a sister who only called when she needed something. And maybe the biggest surprise, I don't feel guilty. I thought I would. For most of my adult life, guilt was baked into my bones. Like I owed my family for being the capable one. The one who didn't cause problems. The one who always picked up the phone. But now I see clearly. They weren't asking me to help. They were expecting me to disappear inside everyone else's mess. That's over. I still think about Jaden and his brothers. I still send Christmas gifts quietly. No return address. I get little crayon notes every few months, passed through teachers or school counselors. I save everyone. Not because I need credit, but because it reminds me there's still something good that came out of all this. They deserve better than to grow up learning manipulation is normal. That love means bending until you snap. And I can't give them a new mother, but I can give them a quiet safety net wrapped in boundaries. That's enough. As for Natalie, we haven't spoken. She tried once, sent me a 3-line email around Mother's Day. Hope you're happy. You turned my whole family against me. Congrats, I didn't reply. What is there to say to someone who thinks consequences are cruelty? Let her think what she wants. I've spent too long building peace to let her rent space in my head again. Daniel's been my anchor. Through it all, we laugh now, sometimes darkly, about the cake incident. He calls it our baptism by frosting. The stories become legend in our friend group. I used to flinch when people brought it up. Now I lean in because that moment, wild, humiliating, messy, set me free. Funny how disaster sometimes does that. Last week I had lunch with my dad. He's not a big talker, never has been. But he said something between bites of his sandwich that stuck with me. I was proud of you, for how you handled it. You didn't lose your temper. You didn't scream. You just acted. That was the whole compliment. That's how he is. But I held on to it like gold. I don't carry rage anymore. Not toward Natalie. Not toward my mom for enabling her. Not even toward my younger self who thought silence was love. I just don't owe them anything. I don't owe access to my time, my wallet, or my forgiveness. Forgiveness is earned. So is trust. And I'm finally at peace with walking away from people who demand both and offer neither. Here's what I know now. You are allowed to say no even to family. You are allowed to stop being the family fixer. You are allowed to keep the money you earned, the time you've protected, and the energy you used to give away for free. You are allowed to set the cake down gently, walk away from the party, and never look back. And if they say you're cold or dramatic or selfish, let them, because sometimes being selfish is the most generous thing you can do for yourself. The night before I submitted the trust reassignment paperwork, I went back and opened one of the documents I'd written months earlier, a spreadsheet that detailed every expense I'd paid on Natalie's behalf. I'd named the file just temporaryfamilyhelp.xlsx. I changed the name that night.